Flying over the rugged, arid mountains of northern Afghanistan today reveals a landscape that seems completely untouched by Western antiquity. Archaeologists found a massive grid of stone foundations belonging to a meticulously planned ancient city. The architecture of this site, known as Ai-Khanoum, is explicitly Greek. The city featured a massive gymnasium and a white stone theater large enough to seat 5,000 spectators. Inside those ruins, excavators found a unique cultural overlap. There were sanctuaries dedicated to Zeus, but they were built in the enclosed, thick-walled style of Zoroastrian fire temples. The royal treasury even contained fragments of papyrus covered in the philosophy of Plato. Ai-Khanoum functioned as a permanent Hellenistic metropolis, thriving thousands of miles from the Mediterranean. Its presence at the edge of the Himalayas implies a history that contradicts its geography. The history starts in the 4th century BC, when Alexander the Great marched his forces through this region, pushing his men to the absolute limits of the known world. His unstoppable army hit a wall of psychological terror at the Hydaspes River. There, the Greeks faced an entirely new method of warfare: 130 heavily armored Indian war elephants charging their lines. Exhausted by years of marching and traumatized by the brutality of the fighting, the Greek troops mutinied. Alexander was forced to abandon his eastward expansion, leaving his wounded, exhausted veterans behind to garrison the newly conquered territory. These cities were founded by battle-scarred survivors, deposited in a deeply unfamiliar landscape, and forced to build a life from the wreckage of the campaign. Following Alexander's death, his empire fractured. The succeeding Seleucid Empire, based in the Mediterranean and Middle East, began to view these distant eastern frontiers as a strategic liability. To secure an advantage in conflicts closer to home, the Seleucid ruler traded his eastern territory to the Indian Mauryan Empire. His price was a fleet of 500 war elephants. This trade left the Greeks in Bactria isolated. They became an island of Hellenic culture, entirely surrounded by formidable foreign powers and the vast northern steppes. Decades passed before the Seleucid emperor Antiochus III decided to reclaim the region. He marched a massive army east, determined to crush the rogue state and re-establish imperial control. In response, the Greco-Bactrian king Euthydemus launched a desperate midnight strike. He led 10,000 armored cavalrymen who charged into the river, slamming into the advancing Seleucid infantry under the cover of darkness. The river battle delayed the invasion just long enough for the Greeks to retreat to their capital. Antiochus laid siege to their cities for 2 years, but the conflict ground down into a bloody stalemate. Antiochus could not break the defenses. Impressed by their resilience, he negotiated a peace treaty that granted the Greco-Bactrians formal independence. The abandoned veterans had successfully fought off their former masters to secure their own sovereign empire. Secured from Western threats, this independent kingdom expanded southward into the Indian subcontinent. Their isolation forced a shift in strategy. They began to integrate with the local population rather than simply trying to dominate them. Two radically different worldviews collided. The traditions of the Greek pantheon began to intermingle with the emerging spiritual philosophies of early Buddhism. You can see the result in Gandharan art. For the first time, the Buddha was depicted in human form, carved in stone. The specific Greek stylistic influences are unmistakable. The Buddha is draped in the heavy, elegant drapery typically carved for classical Mediterranean deities. This isolated outpost functioned as an evolutionary crucible. By fusing Greek and Indian styles, the Greco-Bactrians established the visual language that would define the depiction of the Buddha across the Eastern world.